lovely to see you all here for this fantastic National Contemporary Art Award 2025. This year, if some of you were at the opening last night, you would have heard our fabulous judge, Nigel Borell, talking about his selection, and he's going to do that in more detail today. I've known Nigel for some time as well, being in the art world, and I have to say that he's been one of these people who have fostered our Māori and Pacifica artists in particular over the years. I came across him editing a magazine. What was that called, Nigel?
Tūmai?
Tūmai, yeah. And he has worked in many institutions as well, and has a bit to say about them. And he has a documentary coming up, which is opening next week, Wednesday next week it is. And this documentary is about the process of curating a large-scale exhibition called Toi Tu Toi Ora, which I'm hoping some of you had the opportunity to see at Auckland Art Gallery when he was the curator there. So that's something to look out for all you Ngāti arties who like to understand what goes on behind the scenes, because I think you'll find it quite revealing. And I think it's one of the things that's occurred to me about this particular selection is this focus on both narrative content and craftsmanship. And that says a lot about our judge, because when he's had the experience he has, he can look at, 480 works and come down to 53. And he said last night that everyone's a winner, and that is very true because of the scale of this show. So without further ado, let's put our hands together for our fantastic judge, Nigel Borell.
Yeah, thanks, Maddie. Morena, everybody. Lovely to be with you all again, and I hope you enjoyed last night, those of you that came to celebrate the evening and to celebrate the artists in the show. And it's great to be here to talk more about a few things, the process of selecting, which is a bit of is an eye-opener in itself, and the works that got nominated and selected, I suppose, in that process. And for me, it's lovely to be here at the Waikato Museum and to be sharing in this process. And like I said last night, it's an honour to be a judge, but it's also a responsibility. So, you know, it goes hand in hand with a task to do, which is to select and to articulate a selection of those 480 entries into 53 that you see in the show. And I think about that process, it was amazing, like I said last night, just to see the range of artist voice and making that came through that process. And I felt it was really important to show a true reflection of the diversity of those applicants and entries this year. And I think it was a surprise to all of us when they said out of the 480 you have 434 that you're going to need to look at, read and make commentary on in terms of a selection. So that was quite daunting in itself, but like I say, fascinating to see the range of making, the range of ideas and thoughts, and it was almost like a litmus test, a bit of a check-in to see what artists were interested in, what they were wanting to convey in their work, and some of the messages and themes that were coming through. There were some really strong commentaries around this idea of humanity and checking in with how we are placed relationally with one another and in relation to different ideas and concepts about harmony, about communication, about justice, about our idea of being located in the Pacific, but also this commentary about being part of a global community. For me, those came through really strongly. And there was a lot of commentary about the land and about our place and relationship to it. So that came through also in those entries. But what I loved also, and I think Marie's touched on it, is as an artist before I was a curator, I was an artist and I had the privilege of working on 3 meeting houses under Tohunga Whakairo Paki Harrison. So as a youngster, I think I was 21 when I worked on my first meeting house under his leadership on the kōwhaiwhai and the mural works. And it was sort of like an apprenticeship before I even did any fine arts training. And I think I've always been interested in the hand and the maker's hand being part of the conversation of the art that we produce and see and that we connect with. So it's no coincidence that the maker's hand is quite visible in a lot of the works you see in the selection. But also this blurring of this idea of fine art being the focus of what a great art conversation is. For me, in my own art training, being exposed to customary Māori art at a young age and then working on 6 meeting houses over the course of my career to date, with my artist hat firmly on, and then going to fine arts school and doing my fine arts training, I feel like the tradition of making, the realm of craftsmanship, and the idea that craft is not part of that conversation was foreign to me, and has never been part of the way I see art. So I suppose that's reflected in what I've selected for the finalists in the award, and craftsmanship on all scales, and I suppose in all realms of making tradition are represented in one way, shape or form in the show, which is great. It maybe was, unconsciously a decision I was making as I was going through the list. But I also like, I like artists that have something to say, and whether they're saying that through the artist statement or visually through their work, those are compelling to me. And so I was selecting aesthetic decisions, and I think that's very valid when you are talking about a visual art award, is that our artist statements say one thing, but our aesthetic decisions that we make on the canvas or on the material or in the art making process, they say something uniquely their own as well. So I am making decisions based on the aesthetics of art as much as the theoretical discussions that sit with them. And sometimes I'm making them based on one or the other, and sometimes I'm making them based on both. So I think when I think about the title of being a judge, it's like, oh my gosh, what does it even mean? What does it even mean to be a judge? And of course it means that you get to make these decisions, but I think at the same time, it's like looking at any exhibition, me coming into this show, if I wasn't the judge, I would still be judging in my head, as we all are, about those things that resonate and speak to us. So I felt that I was doing a bit of that. I'm doing a bit of that every time I'm looking at art, to be honest. And then some of those ideas resonate with me enough to want to purchase them. And sometimes they resonate enough for me want to put them in an exhibition and to think about those ideas alongside another set of ideas. And there's been a lot of commentary about the way in which these works sit together, and I can take the credit for that, or I can say actually that was a group effort with the exhibition designer here at the museum, who unfortunately wasn't well enough to come last night to join us, but her work, what's her name? Celeste Thomas has done an amazing job bringing that 53 artworks together into a really cohesive experience and exhibition. So it's very much, a group effort in what you see in front of you at the moment. Doing the selection, it's one thing to look at artworks on a laptop and to flick through images to do your selects. And it's really another experience to come into the gallery 2 days ago and to see the show and to think through the works while they're in front of you. And in a really useful and healthy way, the works they are 10 times more compelling when you're standing in front of them than when they are on a screen. So that was definitely my experience of seeing the works in the flesh. In some instances, it reiterated the importance and the power of works, and then in other instances, it allowed me to dive deeper into what was actually on the surface. And I think that's the great thing about being able to connect with the works, is that you have that experience and you can see them in a much more powerful and compelling way when they're in front of us. Selecting was hard, to be honest. The 53 was actually, while it was hard, it was the easy part. Coming into the gallery and then making a decision around a bit of a short list and then whittling that short list down once again was the process I went through over the last couple of days. And I returned to works often in trying to make that decision and to think through that decision. And of course, with anonymous judging and blind judging, you're focusing on the statements that the artist is offering you, but also what the work is saying to you. And for me, Zena Elliott's work was one that hit me from the get-go. It was a very compelling work. It was a very accomplished piece, and it was a very self-assured statement. And sometimes, when you get those types of works, you can be a bit ambivalent because you feel like the conversation's complete and there's no room for me to offer something to that engagement as the viewer. But that wasn't the case. So it was a work that I returned to a few times over the last couple of days in doing the select. And for me, it was compelling for a range of reasons. For someone who's learned in Māori art and customary Māori art, the waha or the mouth becomes this very central icon in our art making practices, which represents many notions, and some of those ideas are about the passing on of knowledge, the right to speak, the right to share that knowledge, the way in which voice informs our ideas of knowledge, were all latently packed in that piece. And then what happens when that mouth or that vehicle for transmission is being shut down or isn't able to communicate in the ways that it feels like it rightly could or should? And so the chain and the padlock that sits dead in the middle of the work was showing, it was a tension and an availability to knowledge that wasn't there. And to me, that was reflected in the artist's statement and some of those polemic statements that are transmitted in a motif and proposition that you see when you see something chained and locked and off limits. So from a cultural point of view, it was very potent and it was very powerful. From a symbolic point of view, it was also carrying that weight. Mm-hmm. But like we see with Zena's work, she also uses colour in really vibrant, energetic ways. So you're also tripped up by the way in which they're made very now and very contemporary by her use of urban signifiers and colour and symbols, but merged within these very customary ideas. I liked the mix of all of those elements, and I was thinking to myself, how much do I like it? So I walked around the room, and it's interesting because if you come back to something, there is something that you're responding to. So to me, that's the litmus test with art, is allowing yourself enough breathing space to come back to it, or let it speak, draw you back in. And that happened with a few works. And the other work that really captivated me and just sort of I fell in love with was the work by Leanne Mulder, who was our runner-up around the corner. You know, for me as a painter, it's my area of interest as an artist, broadly speaking. There's like a real resurgence, and maybe it's a mixture of artists sussing out what I'm interested in and putting in works, and maybe it's vice versa, me selecting painters. So there's a lot of the hand, like I say, in the selections that you see in this year's award. But there's a lot of painters as well, and it's really fascinating to me because painting seems to be, or the maker's hand is making a bit of a resurgence in the art that we're creating, and it's almost like this intervention. And it wasn't planned, but there's only one digital moving image work in the show, and that's on the opposite wall to this work. And that was sort of didn't dawn on me till I came and saw the show as well. I thought, oh my gosh, I only selected one moving image work. But again, I think it's an interesting statement in itself in terms of time and where we're at. And then when I look at Leanne's work, to me, I love the nature of it being very playful, very experimental, but very liberated. And her work has a simple message around the land carrying memory. And for me, when I think about this environment that we sit within, and the way in which the landscape, land, informs our idea of location and where we are, I see that in a work like this. I see her joyful paint, and I see her really clever use of colour and dimensionality to create depth. And I think it was a bit of a shock to her to sort of to be given this award, but to me it's a recognition of a really successful painting. And the thing about an award like this is that you're putting forward anonymously one work. And so that one work is going to be doing all the heavy lifting. It's not your career, it's not your CV, it's the one work that's in contesting for that award. And I love that about this type of thing, is that the one work is going to be doing the talking for you and on behalf of you. And so for me, I love that I can see the maker's hand in this painting, this landscape painting. I love that it's sort of slightly retro when we think about landscape paintings of the 70s and of the 80s. To me, it's got a touch of that quality to it. But I like that about it. I like the fact that there are layers and there is depth there. And the brush strokes, the maker's hand, are not trying to be disguised. You know, the thing for me about digital media is that it sort of it disguises the intervention of the artist sometimes, and the faults are what make an artwork unique and make it compelling and make it relatable. And when I say faults, it's the way in which not everything is perfect, not everything is an exact science, but I find with digital media and the digital age that we are sort of moving away from faults, or that slippage, that humanality, I like to call it, is being covered up. And I think that's what I like about the maker's hand being so visible, is that we get that interaction with their work and their ideas in a way that is unimpeded by that type of technology. That sounds really bad for digital media artists, but hey, that's the opportunity that the judge gets to do. They get to shape and present, but they also get to have some quirky moments. So I really love this little number here, the Keep Smiling and You Can Do It award, because They obviously knew they were not going to get the prize, but they sort of said, well, I've got the prize already. But maybe, who knows, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I really liked the idea, the witty sort of nature of their entry. And, you know, to me, art is about that type of humour as well, and tenacity to put your ideas out there. And no matter where they sit on the spectrum, we have one that's talking about Gaza and children and the humanity of that situation. And to me, that was really important to make sure that moments in time are captured and allowed to be seen in an award in 2025. And that my selects were being true to who was putting their work into the hat this time round. So I like the diversity of the entries and their ideas and what they were presenting. And it was really cool to meet a lot of the artists last night. And so many of them were just so rapt to be in the show. And there was one artist who said, this is my first time showing my work publicly, and to feel that it's been endorsed and allowed to sit in a show like this where it's been selected, it gave him food for thought to have his first solo. So I love to hear those stories, and I think it's really important that art gets to sort of do that type of work as well, and is reflective of our community. And our artists are essential, you know, when we think about the way in which artists make commentaries about our day-to-day lives, and they talk about topics that are uneasy, and sometimes art is that very subversive but also safe way to interact with really heavy topics. And I love that our artists hold a really important role in being the facilitator of some of those conversations. So we're at one of the other Merit Awards from last night, and that's the work by Kelly Rowe called Access Denied. And I remember seeing this one online and thinking, oh wow, that's really compelling, I want to see more. It's interesting because like some of the selects are, I want to just see this in the room and I can understand it better. But what I did understand was reading the artist statement, which was talking about a very sort of powerful topic, which is home ownership and the attainability or not of that, but also our rise in homelessness. And you know, this seems to be a really prevalent issue. Some might say for a very long time, but it's a pressing issue right now. And to me, this work was really speaking to something very pertinent. And I got to meet Kelly, and she's here, last night. And it was fascinating to hear that she's got an architect background. And then I saw the work again differently. I was like, yes, I can see that structure, and I can see that the way in which the view is being sort of presented to me. But also it just made what was presented quite compelling. You know, I actually, Kelly, you want to come over here by me? This is the thing when you're going to come to the talk, I might do this. And the way in which the key is tied to a chain, but it seems to be disconnected from it. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your piece? Come on, you can do it.
But,
I know.
Look, I think as coming from a background working in architecture, but now differently very much an artist, I think it's really important to have conversations that are hard. And I feel really strongly that shelter and architecture and exclusion and inclusion, land, it affects every single one of us. And it's just so important to have those conversations, and this piece for me was enabling continuing those conversations, because sometimes we just keep moving or focus on our things, but it's a collective issue in our country but also across the world. So I think it's really important. So
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yay. See, well done, Kelly. Thank you. And congratulations again, and it's sold, by the way, too. And I just think that is a beautiful piece of painting. Everything else aside, that painting is exquisite, that you see the window view of a house or a shelter that's sort of unattainable. So yeah, I loved this work, and it was one that captured me actually from the get-go, and I'm so glad to see it acknowledged and to have you here. Kia ora, Kelly. So there are so many amazing works in this show, and it's almost like it's a tragedy that that you have to sort of do this process of selecting, but nonetheless that's the arena and the nature of the award. And this Merit Award is the work of Cora Allen. It's interesting with blind judging, you know, there are no names, of course, but if you are in the arts sector and in the arts scene and are doing your job well, you should have a little bit of an idea of who some of them are. And I did have a bit of an inkling as to who some of them might be. An artist like Cora Allen is quite distinct in her practice and in her style. And again, when you're looking at something online, it can look quite flat. And then when the work was on the wall and I was doing the walkthrough the other day, I saw the dimensions in the work and the texture of the work, and the work started to do a lot more talking. And you know, I think you judge the works again when you're in the room. You're doing that final select. You're doing your online select, and then in the room you're doing your what's in front of you select. And that was an opportunity to engage with the work and to see it and to think about it more clearly. And I think for Cora Allen, of being both Māori and Pacifica descent, she often sees her practice as a bridge between those two parts of her identity. And her training and her reverence and her heritage in siapo making is part of the, I suppose, the aesthetic that we see in her practice. And this, the blue, I thought it was very captivating. When I looked closer, I could sort of see the hand, the finger, but I could see the depth and the texture of the layers of the work. And I think art is the type of thing that you listen to your inner voice, and if that's what you're responding to, then that's what you acknowledge, and that's what you are compelled to respond back to. I think that's the conversation for me with art, is that it's speaking to you, and the works that are speaking back to you are the ones that you should be engaging with. And that might be very much not a judge's mind, but a maker's mind and an artist's mind, and perhaps that's the way I've judged the awards, is through that lens and through that sensibility. But I really enjoyed her work, and I enjoyed seeing it in the flesh. But I enjoyed seeing all of the works, I have to say, and there were some that just sort of captivated me, such as the work of the chair and the hat and the coat and that really dynamic purple and pink colouring, and then to be able to see that it was Donna Dinsdale's work. You've submitted a few times now, Donna, eh? No, this first time in this award. I feel like I've seen you acknowledged in other art. Yes, yeah. So it was really cool to see that it was Donna's work when everything was revealed. I used to work at the Bay of Plenty Polytech back in the day, in another life, with Donna, and Donna was working in the fashion. Are you still there, Donna? Yeah, she's still there. And it's got a different name these days, but in the fashion school, and doing amazing things back then. So it was pretty cool to see that glam work was related to that glam artist. Kia ora, Donna. And that's, to me, you know, the art world. And I think that's a good thing about blind judging, is that I don't know who those artists are, and it's a nice surprise when the titles are lifted off and you get to see who's who in the room. But I have to say, it's been a really great experience, and it's been a humbling one, sort of being this role of facilitating the works through, chaperoning the works through, for lack of a better word, and allowing them to be seen in this context as the entries for the National Art Award for 25. And I've enjoyed the range and the diversity of the works and the ideas that are being presented. So yeah, just in closing, just want to acknowledge the Waikato Museum, their team, Liz Cotton, the director, the curators, the exhibition designers, and all of the people behind the scenes that go into making a big project like this happen. They did warn me at the beginning that there's some really intense moments, and when I saw the entries, that was the first intense moment. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to have to put some time into this. So that they run a well-oiled machine in terms of the awards and facilitating it. And in closing, like I said last night, these awards are really important because it is now the only national art award where artists get to be acknowledged in this type of way. So it's now the beacon, and you could argue it has been for a very long time. It's a long-standing art award, but it's a lone art award at the moment, and its job has become even more important in the current climate for our artists to be seen and to be celebrated in this sort of way, and to be acknowledged with such a great prize, or prizes I should say. So I'm rapt to be part of that legacy and that movement as well. Ngā mihi, kia ora. Yeah.